Welcome to the next in our online messages brought to you by the friends at First Church Raleigh. This is Reverend Tom Bentley, the pastor, hoping that these messages can help you in your journey of life. If you'd like to know more about the ministry at First Church Raleigh, there'll be a little information for you at the end of this video. So thank you for spending time with us. So grace to you and peace from God our Creator and our friend Jesus. I usually start my messages by reminding everyone, including myself, that life is tough, it's difficult, it's complicated. It's not often what we signed up for. It slaps us around. There's a lot of sorrow and grief and loss. I mean, it's a tough run. It's not only suffering, but when pain arrives, it's hard to ignore it and just take up with the other more easy aspects of our existence. What the divine creative force in the universe has to offer about this is a promise. If you're a Christian, you're actually one of the people of the promise, and that's the old way it was described. What's this promise about? Well, it's a covenant, berith in Hebrew, the covenant, the testament, the promise. That's the connection to the divine creative force. And we hear Paul talk about it in the book of Romans in the beginning of the 4th chapter. Let's take a look at a little bit of that. If you're a hard worker and do a good job, you deserve your pay. We don't call your wages a gift. But if you see that the job is too big for you, that it's something only God can do, and you trust Him to do it, you could never do it for yourself, no matter how hard and how long you worked. Well, that trusting Him to do it is what gets you set right with God, by God. Sheer gift. Sheer gift. It's a gift, this promise is, this covenant. And in that book, that letter to the Romans, Paul talks a lot about Abraham, and that Abraham is this old patriarch, this old dude who's way past his prime. But God comes and says, Come with me, I'll show you a land you've never seen. And the old man, his name was actually Abram at that point, says, okay, I'll do it. He and his old ancient wife Sarah proceed to go where God shows them to go. And it's the land where the Israelites will gather, and God's promise to Abraham is, you will be the person of many nations. And Abraham is what that translates in Hebrew, person of many nations. So it's a promise. We all can accept or reject this promise of God, but what is this promise of the divine creative force of love in the universe? What is it? Well, because that's what God is, that's the promise. It's compassion, it's mercy, it's love. That all this God stuff is what God is all about. And so we don't like the word God, and I avoid it when I can because it's been debased. But this idea that in our very essence and existence, we are connected to creation. And that's where we encounter this promise. Because we can't do this on our own. I mean, we can't make ourselves immortal. We all die, and that's a pressing issue in our minds, often, sometimes way in the back, but it shows up. When loss and grief come, we think of our own departure, and it's a fearful moment, isn't it? But the promise of God is present, and all the teachings of what we call faith and religion point that way. And it's not just wishful thinking, it's the very structure of who and what we are. Nicodemus, who was this great teacher in Jerusalem, who had mastered the Torah, the law, and all the teachings of Judaism, still hadn't figured some things out. He actually visits Jesus in the evening because Jesus is being declared a bit of a heretic, and some of his fellow Pharisees, the fellow Pharisees of Nicodemus, are trying to track Jesus down to do him in. So Nicodemus, but he goes there, and they have that little famous exchange in this chapter of the book of John. Unless a person submits to the original creation, the wind hovering over the water creation, the invisible moving the visible, a baptism into a new life. It's not possible to enter God's kingdom. When you look at a baby, it's just that, a body you can look at and touch. But the person who takes shape within is formed by something that you can't see and touch, the Spirit, and becomes a living spirit. Jesus hears the heady chit-chat of Nicodemus and knows the law as this guidance, this legalistic guidance of how to behave when you're a human being, and somehow that'll make you right with this divine creative force, and not always a loving force in the Old Testament narrative indeed. But Jesus brings something to bear here. And later on in this passage, he says these famous words we see all about. This is a slightly different translation, but quite accurate, drawn out of the Greek. This is how much God loved the world. He gave his Son, his one and only Son, and this is why, so that no one need be destroyed. By believing in him, anyone can have a whole and lasting life. So the promise is something we accept, we adopt, we live into and live through. And this famous passage about God so loving the world has been abused because we say, well, the entry door is this big, but the exit door is huge. So all you people that want to go along with this, get out. And that's not what Jesus means. He means that there's a vitality in your being right now that if you own that and connect to that, you will be in the love of God, and that will transcend everything in life, because that taps you into the promise of this life abundant, absolutely a massive expansion of your own existence in the flesh, and then points in a direction where you won't be in that form, but you'll be in some other state or condition of grace. And that's how we're invited to walk. And every human being has since the beginning of our sentient days of awareness. We walk with the creative, divine force of love in the universe. And tough news for some, we don't have to have Jesus to guide us there. But when we walk with Jesus, I guarantee you, in the confidence of many things, that love will abound. Because he isn't just a companion. He's a teacher, an instructor, and ultimately a redeemer who buys us back from having been sold on the open market. And we're in bondage and we're in a slavery, and we're brought back by Jesus and then offered many gifts, the gifts of forgiveness, which are hard to deliver but easy to receive, the gifts of compassion and mercy, which push us out into the world to be this unremitting, irresistible love of the world. God so loved the world, this divine creative force, that yes, gave God's only Son, is what the Greek says, but also gives each of us now to the world, to the universe. We're a song holding back into itself, a continued song of grace. And we can sing with Jesus. It's a good way to sing in harmony. So I invite you to sing in harmony. Own the promise that Paul talks about. Lean on the everlasting arms. It's not a bloody accident. Love is real. If you don't believe in God, do you believe in love? I think you do. And that means you've accepted some, if not all, of this promise. And in the name of the one who offered us an understanding about this covenant promise, Jesus, I say, Amen. So thank you for spending time with us again. If you'd like to know more about the First Congregational Church of Raleigh or First Church Raleigh, you can go online at firstchurchraleigh.org. And of course, we'd always like to hear from you. You can call us anytime at 978-948-3993. So, peace and best wishes. Goodbye.